Hello and welcome back to Watching Brief for the week of the 15th of July 2024. We are on a fairly warm day, an unusually warm day this summer actually, or certainly an unusually warm and dry day, gathered together to do our best not to talk about UK politics in this episode, aren't we, Andy?
We are, and I just have to say, down here in London. It is very grey, and it's been drizzly all day. So,
okay, right. Well,
yeah.
Here we're pushing sort of 23, 24 degrees, and it's very, very humid. So yeah. But anyway, enough about the weather. We.
Are British. We talk about the weather all the time.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. We're sharing our culture with the world as ever. But
absolutely.
No, in all seriousness, we have some rather concerning breaking news to talk about this week, and then a series of headlines that we figured deserve your attention, really. We're getting back on track with broader archaeological news now that the election has been and gone. And I suppose the first one is one that we really only heard about, or I certainly only heard about it today. And it seems to be a potentially rather serious story involving, unusually for archaeology, a big sum of money, £100,000 potentially having gone missing. What's going on, and what can we say about it in that sense? What do we know, and what can we say?
Relatively little at the moment, because a person has been charged and is appearing in court on Thursday.
Right.
The story relates to what is actually one of the longest running and most well-known community archaeology projects in the UK, the Sedgwick Historical and Archaeological Research Project, or SHARP as it's abbreviated to.
Right.
It's a community project that's centred around the village of Sedgford in North Norfolk, and it was founded in the mid-1990s by Dr. Neil Faulkner, the late Dr. Neil Faulkner. People might remember we did an obituary for Dr. Faulkner when he died a couple of years ago. He was quite a well-known figure, quite a well-known TV archaeologist, very much a political activist as well, and believed in what he called democratic archaeology, and the SHARP project was set up to embody those ideals. So it was meant to be non-hierarchical. People were able to participate. It was inclusive. So, even people with relatively little experience were put onto serious excavation work, like, for example, digging skeletons under supervision and training, obviously. But the idea was it was the best of what archaeology can be as a community project. As I said, Dr. Faulkner died in 2022, and it now transpires that the project appears to have had substantial financial irregularities that are alleged to have taken place between the roughly 2019 and to be discovered at the end of the 2023 last year's digging season.
Right. So this hasn't been discovered then a couple of days ago, and suddenly now this has been investigated, presumably internally, and then referred, and so on and so forth.
No. What appears to have happened is that the SHARP project was undergoing some internal reorganisations.
Right.
And the management and trustees basically were notified at the end of the 2023 season that there were these alleged financial irregularities. Of course, if you're in charge of a charity and it's a registered charity, with something like that happening, you have to call in the police and also notify the Charities Commission.
Yes.
Both those things have happened. There has been a police investigation. And last month, the former treasurer of the SHARP project was charged with 2 counts, one charge of false accounting and one charge of fraud by abuse of position between 2019 and 2023. It's a woman called Pamela Bent. She's 65. She's a resident of King's Lynn in Norfolk, and she is appearing in court at King's Lynn Magistrates Court for initial hearing on the 18th of July, this Thursday.
Okay. Obviously, it's an ongoing legal case, so we can't speculate too much more about the details of it. But what, if anything, does this have to say about the archaeological culture surrounding it? In so much as is this a potentially a broader charities issue and vulnerability in terms of the setup of steering groups and boards and the people who are involved with things like, for example, money and arranging invoices and this kind of thing. So in that, I suppose in that sense, this isn't well. Sorry, I'm suspecting. Maybe you can confirm that this isn't necessarily because this is an archaeological project that £100,000 has gone missing.
No, obviously situations like this can arise all the time, and obviously the most famous and high-profile event of a charity actually going bust was a charity called Kids Company some time ago now.
Yeah.
Which there were many allegations, some of which were subsequently proven to be false. So we have to be very, very careful in talking about these kind of things. Now, as things stand at the moment, the new management of Sharp have put a public statement up on their website, and we can link to it. They've apologized to the members of the organization, and they've stated that they're improving the charity systems to make finances more secure and finances more transparent. They put in place new handling procedures, but they say that the upshot of these events is that they've started the year with very little in the way of contingency funds. And although they remain hopeful they'll break even, they are still being hampered by higher costs for things like portaloos. And they've had to actually scale down this year's project. But they're confident that they will be able to survive and go forward into the future. They have also asked that, they've discouraged any comment or active discussion about what's gone on. Again, that's perfectly sensible. It's also a legal situation. Obviously, anything that's published, the Contempt of Court Act applies. Which is why we're being very careful about what we say. But they say that if anyone has any remaining concerns, they should contact the managers, the trustees, and that when they're able to, when the legal case or cases have concluded, that they will produce a report as to what's gone on, and that they'll take questions and basically be as open as they can to their members and obviously to the wider archaeological community, who are going to be very concerned that an organisation that high profile, that's very well known across the country and indeed internationally, that's been going for nearly 30 years, can find itself in this situation.
Yeah, I suppose to flip that on its head, if they can, anyone can, I suppose, and it's a good reminder to any similar organisation to keep an eye on this sort of stuff. And I'm not saying that there's not a direct connection, but in my mind, I am also drawn to the fact that we're going to be seeing probably in the coming months some increasing details around some of the weaknesses of the portable antiquities scheme and handling of materials and, again, valuable objects passing through the hands of people who in the context of a charity, for example, or in the context of the PAS, you would hope would be doing, would be good chaps, and we've often criticised this idea of good chaps management and good chaps structures. People are individuals, and individuals can be variously vulnerable to temptations in various ways. So I guess, something to keep an eye on. Obviously, we'll return to this story as and when we can, and to end on a light note, I genuinely was surprised. I was like, seriously, £100,000 in archaeology? Really? But yeah, it's also a sad story as well, obviously.
Yes.
Next, we come to the old perennial If only it were perennial. We come to the ever reliable story of Stonehenge and the A303 tunnel improvement project, or traffic improvement project, traffic easing project. It is back in the High Court, and I'm curious about the context of this. I know that last I knew, anyway, last we heard, there was an issue of waiting to see what was happening in other cases to do with carbon capture problems or potential mathematical issues of calculating the impact of projects regarding the environment. Is this to do with that, or is this a separate thing, another thing that's happening?
It's not separate in it's the same organisation that is involved in bringing the case in the High Court. It's the Safe Stonehenge World Heritage Landscape group, who are part of the Stonehenge Alliance, or spun off from the Stonehenge Alliance, and so on. It's a group of individuals who have brought the actual case, and the same ones who brought the previous cases and judicial reviews, which, as you say, last time ended up with the judge's ruling going against them, with the exception of one ground, which was postponed pending the results of another case, and that is yet to fully work its way through the system. But what we've got here is actually further arguments, and they're procedural arguments. It's not. I can't stress enough, and we always stress this. What is being adjudicated here is not whether there's going to be good archaeology if the road scheme goes ahead, the A303 tunnel and upgrade that National Highways, what used to be called Highways England, National Highways, want to build across the Stonehenge and Avebury World Heritage Landscape.
Yeah,
it's actually about how that decision has come about procedurally, administratively in government.
And what should be clear, just for the sake of absolute clarity on that, is that this is despite what some archaeologists out there, friends and colleagues, and people who follow Archaeosoup on social media, have pointed out. Yes, but on their social media, this campaigner said this once about archaeologists. That's not the thing that's going into court. So rhetoric and passions, shall we say, isn't the thing that the legal system is interested in. It, as you say, it's points of order, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's points of law, points of procedure. The campaigners have crowdfunded this latest hearing. The hearing began yesterday, and it's due to run until tomorrow, so roughly 3 days. And the Safe Stonehenge World Heritage Site Alliance are seeking to appeal the previous judgment on 8 separate grounds, and then that would then lead to a further judicial review of the Department of Transport's decision if they win on any of those grounds. Now, what lawyers for the campaigners have argued so far is to do with the most recent adjudication, the most recent development consent order, which was given in the name of the then Transport Secretary, Marc. This all happened before the general election, obviously. And so in a sense, there's a new government now that's going to have to clear up this mess. But the junior minister concerned is another Conservative, it was another Conservative MP at the time, Hugh Merriman. And among the things that the Alliance's lawyers are arguing was that, first of all, the judge in the previous case might not have been correct to rule that Hugh Merriman didn't need to reconsider material from the original decision to grant consent, which was given by another former Conservative MP, Grant Shapps.
Okay.
So the development consent order but one ago, if you like. And the the allegation is that Mr. Merriman should have reconsidered the material that Mr. Shapps had also previously looked at, and particularly evidence that and opinions that the project will cause permanent and irreversible harm to the World Heritage Site landscape.
Right. Yeah.
It also, the appeal is also arguing that Hugh Merriman ignored evidence that the scheme would put Stonehenge's status as a World Heritage Site at risk. Now, that was hypothetical until a couple of weeks ago, when, as we've reported previously, UNESCO put a discussion of whether to put Stonehenge and Avebury World Heritage Site on the World Heritage Sites at Risk register at their forthcoming meeting.
True, that is coming up, but it's also fair to say it was hypothetical, but also it was very much floated by UNESCO. UNESCO had said, like, if you do this, we may have to think about that. You know, yeah, exactly. So it wasn't entirely hypothetical. It was mood music that was being put out by UNESCO already. Yeah,
absolutely. Now the argument is that Mr. Merriman acted unlawfully in that he ignored the UK's commitments under international conventions, particularly regarding UNESCO. Now, for
would that be in a very small and very specific way?
That's exactly the point. Look, I was going to say that tiny little bit of UK politics here. Yeah. Obviously, the previous
no, we're doing it. We promised we wouldn't.
I have to on this one. Look, I'll be very quick. As I say, I'll do it in a very limited and specific way, as you've just discussed. That is an allusion to a former minister who said that the United Kingdom would break. This is during the Brexit arguments, that the UK will break international law in a very limited and specific way. Yeah. It's a bit like being a little bit pregnant. Yeah. It doesn't really work like that. No. But the Conservative government, under successive prime ministers culminating until the week before last with Rishi Sunak, had, shall we say, a rather individualistic attitude to international commitments, and that it accepted the ones it liked and it didn't the ones it didn't. And in a number of cases, sometimes out of policy, sometimes it would seem out of actually posturing. It downplayed the importance of the international rules-based system. And the argument is that's what's gone on here, that a British minister couldn't appear to be taking the view of UNESCO. We've seen the same thing with the UNESCO Convention on the Protection of Underwater Cultural Heritage, where the UK has refused to sign up to it for what some lawyers argue are quite idiosyncratic reasons.
Yeah. Which partly boil down to we can look after our own stuff. Thank you very much.
And more to the point, we can't have Johnny Foreigner having any sway over our stuff, as it were.
Yeah. Flash forward to HMS Prince of Wales and Repulse.
Yes, which we'll be coming to, I think, in a future watching brief, because there have been developments there which I can't go into at the moment. But so the argument is that, as I say, Mr. Merriman, British government, may have certainly soft pedalled, if not reneged on Britain's international commitments regarding World Heritage status and World Heritage sites, and that was actually unlawful because it's a policy that's been declared following the UNESCO Convention. Is a policy that's been declared to Parliament. Yeah. So and to change policy, they would have to go back to Parliament and explain that they were changing policy. The added complication, of course, is that that we now have a new government in place, which has put great play in moving back towards respect for the international rules-based system, particularly in regards to things like immigration. So the Starmer government has repudiated the Rwanda plan, which was seen by many lawyers to be illegal under international law and convention. And at the top of the legal tree in the Starmer government are some pretty high-powered, experienced human rights lawyers and lawyers with experience of international legal issues, and in fact Keir Starmer himself during his legal career, took cases to international courts. So we're dealing.
See our previous episode for more on that. Yeah,
absolutely. So it may be that the while this is being litigated literally in court as we're recording this, the government itself may be coming back with different ideas to the previous one on this.
Yeah. Again, something most certainly to keep an eye on.
Just quickly on the timescale on this. Obviously the UNESCO meeting is in a matter of days, I think, if I'm rightly. The court case, there's one more day to go at the time of recording, and we're unlikely to hear the results of the case for some time. And of course, all the time the government is reviewing its policy and its projects with a view to its ongoing programme. We've got the King's Speech tomorrow, which I guess will probably be reporting on the archaeological implications of next week.
Yeah, and expenditure obviously is going to be a factor, I suppose, though.
Potentially.
Moving on from a little bit of controversy within the archaeological world to something not remotely controversial, and that is developments by the Israel Antiquities Authority. I think it's probably best just to report the facts on this, isn't it, and not really get too wrapped up in tongue-in-cheek humour. What have they done, and what does it mean?
Right, this is a new bill that has been put forward by a Likud member of the Knesset, a man called Amit Halevi. Likud being the leading party in the governing coalition in Israel under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, this is all to do with positioning over the West Bank, what the United Nations regards as the occupied West Bank, the area that is under the Oslo Accords, under the control of the Palestine Authority, or parts of it are under the control of the Palestine Authority, but also obviously there's an Israeli military government, and under international law it's occupied territory. So it's also full of Jewish settlements, many of which have been established illegally under international law. This is about trying to create facts on the ground which make it allegedly about trying to create facts on the ground which make what's called the two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict more difficult. Many people in Netanyahu's government are ideologically opposed to any form of Palestinian state, and in fact some see they adopt the same slogan from the river to the sea that is used sometimes by supporters of the Palestinian cause. They've turned it to their own cause. The idea that from the River Jordan to the sea is the state of Israel, including places like the Gaza Strip, which is currently the subject of that the horrific conflict which we're seeing daily. What has happened here is that the bill extends the powers of the Israel Antiquities Authority over the West Bank, large parts of the West Bank, which basically extends the power of the Israeli government. At the moment, the responsibility for managing archaeological sites and preserving relics in the West Bank resides with a special archaeological unit within the civil administration, which is headed by a military office. It's this complicated governance, which is part, it's sort of, some of it is arm's length, some of it isn't, and it's horrifically complicated. And obviously the entire Israel-Palestine conflict is equally complicated. Mr. Halevi said that bringing the bill forward and bringing the Israeli Antiquities Authority onto the West Bank on an administrative basis was because, quote, historic artifacts unearthed there, this is in the Times of Israel, quote, have no historical or other connection with the Palestine Authority. In other words, because the Palestine Authority is governing a particular piece of land, if someone digs up some archaeology there, It's basically saying it's not their responsibility, nothing to do with them. They're only there now. Those artifacts, if it relates to, for example, as it's often called by certain Israeli citizens who believe that the West Bank belongs to the state of Israel, they call it Judea and Samaria rather than the West Bank.
Yes.
After the biblical kingdoms.
Yeah.
Um,
and this to put it into a slightly broader context. This is one of the reasons why I often have struggled in the past, actually, to talk about so-called biblical archaeology on the Archaeosoup YouTube channel, but also as well press releases and news coming out of universities in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, I believe sometimes, and also some other regional projects, because it's unfortunate that a lot of the archaeology that's done finds itself being involved in conversations about essentially the legitimacy of the statehood of Israel, and as you say, fairly thinly veiled attempts to expand the influence of that government. Yeah, it can be a bit messy. So this is a unilateral decision that they've made. Does it hold water? Like, will it be enforceable or not?
Well, it's not actually a decision yet. It's still only a proposal.
Right.
And it's actually there's actually some pushback from within Israeli civil and military society on this. The Times of Israel again quotes a source in the in Israeli security, saying, "quote The army through the civil administration retains control over Judea and Samaria, and it should continue this way. The entry of an external non-military body into the West Bank territories is complex." That's referring to the Israel Antiquities Authority. And then the official went on, "Israel has not annexed the territories, and thus the body responsible for all civilian and military life in the West Bank is the civil administration." And in fact, while the Times of Israel article quotes a left-wing political activist called Emek Shaveh, who told Haaretz that the move, quote, "raises the government's intention to advance annexation by any means." Eli Escozido, who is the head of the Israeli Antiquities Authority, is on record in 2022 as saying, "It's true there's a campaign around this, which is extending to the West Bank, but we will not take responsibility for Judea and Samaria." And then he went on, "We weren't asked and we don't want it. On the contrary, we want to strengthen the archaeology staff officer within the civil administration."
Okay.
At the same time, in the context now post-Gaza, post-October 7, there are members of the government, and especially the finance minister, who's a man called Bezalel Smotrich, who see extending authority and transferring authority from a Palestinian state to the Israeli central government and its institutions as being essential to their vision for the future of Israel.
So undeniably, issues of being a bit of a political football, and the extent to which people feel control and in control over various aspects of that. Yeah,
it's manoeuvring.
Yeah. Once again, moving on to something that's not remotely controversial. We head a few hundred miles away now to Egypt, where it seems that politicians have been potentially recorded talking in ways that are counter to the Egyptian Antiquities Authorities remit, shall we say. Again, I'm really trying to be very careful with my language here. What happened, Andy? What happened?
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I thought life was too simple and too uncomplicated just talking about the UK general election all the time. So I thought we'd stretch our remit a little bit this week.
Yeah, yeah.
No, look, this is a we've consistently covered heritage crime stories and including stories about trafficked heritage, and in particular, people might remember some time ago now our coverage of the sale of the statue of Sekhem Ka from Northampton Museum and the interventions by the Egyptian government, who alleged that it had been stolen from Egypt in the 1850s, when Egypt actually had quite strict, it was one of the earliest countries actually to have quite strict export laws preventing the export of antiquities.
Yeah.
And
incidentally, so could I just say something on a point of cultural import? Actually, import as in importance, not import as in exporting materials. Sekhem Ka has potentially achieved precisely the pinnacle of what people aimed for in ancient Egyptian culture, and that's just to have their name said over and over again, so that they kind of live on in the hearts and minds of people. It's interesting, actually, in some ways, that this controversy is actually serving him well, in that sense, but not so much immortal as infamous, perhaps.
Yeah, and the poor guy's probably stuck in some bank vault somewhere as
as collateral or something. Yeah,
as collateral. Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah. We can talk another time about that and where he might be now and why he was sold for so much over the reserve. But anyway, cut to the chase on this latest story. This is a story from Ahram Online, which is an Egyptian news source. And it concerns the perils of having meetings with friends who've got mobile phones with video cameras, and the potential embarrassments that can result. Because this isn't about somebody behaving inappropriately after they've had too many drinks in the pub. This is to do with Egypt's oldest political party, which is called Al-Wafd. Apologies if my pronunciation is a bit astray there. But the party is investigating members who were shown in a leaked video allegedly discussing the trafficking of antiquities. It was a clandestine meeting that was allegedly held in the party's headquarters. It was that brazen.
Okay.
And
were they discussing stopping the trade in illegal antiquities? Was that what they're doing?
No, they were. One person in the conversation is alleged to be heard asking another one to coordinate with a particular individual who possesses, quote, the two pieces.
Oh.
And requesting photos of them.
Oh dear. Okay.
Yes.
Oh dear.
Yeah. I think it just goes. There have long been allegations about corruption within the Egyptian political system, and even within the Egyptian antiquities system. And obviously, the country has had a somewhat difficult time since the 2012 revolutions. Here, they seem to be. They say they're taking it very seriously. They're investigating where the meeting took place, who was involved. It's been confirmed that the individuals in the video are members of the party, but rumours that they're leaders of the party have been dismissed. And the investigation's ongoing. The party has said that what is currently circulating on the social media seriously damages the reputation of the Al-Wafd party and instigates discord among its members. This is an official statement. And it says it diminishes the dignity of the people who founded the party and fought for its principles of freedom, democracy, and human rights. And calls on the membership to unite and defend the party from, quote, misconduct of saboteurs who have infiltrated the party.
Yeah.
It's
unfortunate, it is, and it's clearly again it's a little bit like as we started talking about, people involved in charities where money passes through folks' hands. Temptation clearly is something which no one is ever fully immune to. Interestingly, though, this also comes in the context of the construction of the new Cairo Egyptian Museum, which I do believe has not yet opened.
Although we did have that spectacular procession of the mummies of the pharaohs a couple of years ago. I don't know if you remember it. It was like a sort of mixture of something from a Hollywood epic.
But it was truly spectacular, and that's the reason why I sort of ended on because it felt like such a spectacular that I couldn't. I can hardly believe that it's not open. But in that sense, there's clearly lots of excitement building up to that when that does open. It is set to open this year, and it's at the heart of so much national policy. Particularly, for example, friends and colleagues who do research in Egypt are quite rightly subject to very stringent checks and balances when it comes to coming into Egypt to work, to dig, for example, and what they can and cannot take with them in and out of the country. So it's stuff that it's a shame to hear that senior politicians are on the wrong side of those rules.
Allegedly,
Potentially, on the wrong side of those rules.
Yeah.
Finally, a little bit of I don't know, joy.
Falling upwards.
Failing upwards. With falling upwards. Oh, sorry, yes, falling upwards. Yes, with Hartwig Fischer, the erstwhile head of the British Museum. What's he up to? Where is he now?
New viewer start here. If you remember, Hartwig Fischer is the German former director of the British Museum, who had a pretty good reputation in the museum world until a certain scandal broke with artifacts from the back rooms of the British Museum suddenly appearing on eBay. He then so screwed up the comms around that appeared to refuse to take any responsibility, appeared to blame others, and so on and so on and so on. It would appear that the chair of the governors of the British Museum, George Osborne, basically said, "Clear desk," and he resigned with immediate effect, along with the deputy director.
Yes.
Now. You might think that a bit of gardening leave and some maybe
some metal detecting.
I was going to say a rural retreat in a monastery or something to contemplate what had gone on.
Oh, I see. Yes.
I was to say, well, actually, I know people who metal. Some people who metal detect say it has a restorative
that's what I mean.
effect.
Yeah,
absolutely. And of course they do run the portable antiquities scheme out of the British Museum. And as you alluded to earlier, and which we will no doubt return to again in due course.
I think so.
But anyway, Mr. Fischer, having cleared his desk in London, is a bit like football managers. I think senior leaders of international museums. It's been, Gareth Southgate's just resigned today as the England manager, and there's speculation about who might take over and whether it might be somebody who's not from the British Isles. In fact, we talked about Egypt a moment ago. The big money in museum world at the moment is in the Gulf and in Saudi Arabia. And it's just been announced that Hartwig Fischer, former director of the British Museum, who resigned under something of a cloud after the eBay artifact scandal, has just popped up as to run the Saudi Museum of World Cultures, which is a new venture in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and it looks like a very impressive venture, actually, from what I've seen of it. It's quite a thing. I suppose, he's been given a tremendous opportunity to learn about PR and comms, and hopefully his instincts have been honed following recent events.
Absolutely. I mean, and in fact, in terms of PR and comms, he'll be working for somebody. I think he's still the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, whose comms operation for the last few years has been trying to somewhat sort of get people to forget the fact that he ordered the murder of a journalist who criticised him.
Yeah, yeah. By building the line in the desert.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which has recently been scaled back. Anyway, that's a whole other issue. Yeah, it's fair play to Hartwig, and also to a certain extent, I mean, on a personal, as an interpersonal thing, I can imagine it must be difficult when, he didn't do this. He didn't do what someone is alleged to have done at the British Museum, in stealing things and selling them on eBay, and yet, yeah, I guess the buck does stop with him. So, I can see why he's still employable, and hopefully he's going to have a good.
And as I say, actually, I think that the reason he went from the British Museum, I think he probably would have hung on for at least a while longer because he's to the end of his contract. But they, as I said, it turned into a comms catastrophe, and there was no walking back from it.
No, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, here's hoping that one day we can fall or fail upwards in such spectacular fashion. Thank you so much for your time this evening, Andy. I say this evening, folks at home. It's been an interesting afternoon where we've had to delay filming. I won't go into that, but it's been. We were speculating whether or not I've been cursed by an ancient elder god a little bit before recording, because things keep happening, don't they? It's
I think this might be the subject for your next TikTok. And as I say, I definitely think you should do a nice little TikTok video of you creating your curse tablet before you throw it into the river.
Oh yeah. By the way, people in ancient Rome used to, and then you could see what I'm writing and why I'm writing it. Yeah. Anyway, please do comment below, folks, if you have anything to add to our conversation today. Also, as well, anything that you want us to consider looking at and or covering in the coming weeks and months. As I say, we are now moving, hopefully, away from that fairly intense focus on UK politics and its implications for archaeology and heritage in the UK that we've had, understandably, over the past several weeks, and hopefully also as well we're moving into a period of new ways of doing conversation. Because I think, speaking of TikTok, something that I put out today was my genuine joy and surprise at the fact that CIFA, under their new CEO, have actually said that they've announced that they're going to be actively trying to find ways of finding allies in government to protect. Even the word protect was used to talk about archaeology and heritage in the UK. So maybe we're moving into a different way of talking about this stuff as well, and that would be very welcome. So yeah.
Yeah. And actually, on the subject of our archaeological leadership bodies, if you're in the UK at the moment, the Festival of British Archaeology, which is the CBA's flagship event in its 80th anniversary year,
started today.
The festival. It actually started at the weekend. Weekend just gone, so it's actually running at the moment. If you're in the UK, look up on the CBA website. Look out for festival events. Do support it. It's a great initiative to try and involve as many people as possible in archaeology, doing archaeology, seeing archaeology, talking about it, enjoying it. And that's what, in the end, whatever Marc and I talk about, in the end, that's what we want to do most as well.
Exactly. I'll make that the link of the week, so it'll be on the screen as well.
I think that would be really appropriate.
Grand. Right, guys. Until next time, do take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.